What is happening? Welcome to my YouTube channel and this conversation that I am so excited to have with good friend that we are going to dive in our relationship. Yes, you see him on the screen, Dane Burkholder. He does many things. Let's lead with Dane, you just being an amazing friend. But in addition to that, you are one of the dopest wealth advisors in America. Many people have said that. You can Google Dane and find out how people give him all those awards. So I'll embarrass him right off the bat. But he's a partner at Roseville Wealth Management Group in the state I grew up in Pennsylvania, but his business
Yay, baby.
spans the entire globe. That's right, Dane. We have spent a lot of time together on a bunch of different fronts to set the framework up for this conversation. We both felt the urge to have it because you are an expert in the financial world, but you're also an athlete. And there is this new concept that you really coined around being like a finance athlete, which I think is fun.
R
Like we hear student athlete all the time, but finance athlete is a cool phrase. And in the world of NIL, in recruiting, in college, in post-retirement, whether you're an Hall of Famer, NFL player, or an average college player like myself, you got to deal with it as well as parenting. So that is the framework of today. I'm going to be kind of all those things, and I'm going to lean into you to get your advice and expertise.
Perfect. Let's roll.
Cool. So let's just give people some framework for you as a father, as an expert in finance, as an athlete. Like where did those intersect? When did you begin to fall in love with play and then fall in love with business?
Yeah, so for me, sport has been a big part of my life from the time I can remember. So I started swimming at the age of 5, fell in love with football early on, and played basketball, and ultimately ended up playing football in college. And I think what I learned in sport, what I learned through playing football, and what it takes to be successful in sport, really I carry over with me to this day. So whether it's being a girl dad, I have 2 awesome daughters who are actively involved in sport. Both are really into swimming. As a husband, as a business owner, and part of one of the top financial planning firms in the United States, all of the lessons that I learned through sport and from sport have carried over to this area of life for me. So it's, I think as we were sitting at the coffee shop in Venice Beach about 6 to 8 weeks ago, just kind of sharing life, this concept of financial athlete kept coming up and kept resonating in my head. And I think when we think about what we learn in sport, there are so many similarities between what it takes to be successful on the court or in the pool or on the field, and building wealth, reaching financial goals, building a business, and just having success in life in general.
Yeah, it's really well said. Dane started off his college career at Pitt. Here we go. Hail the Pitt, the
Pitt.
helmet. That's right. That's right. And then continued on. When did you get exposed to finance? Because I feel like it's different now, than when we were in college. And then what do you see now with the athletes that you've talked to and when they get exposed to finance?
Yeah, so I was exposed to finance at a pretty young age. Both of my parents owned businesses growing up, so I saw the dedication and the sacrifice that they did to grow successful businesses. So entrepreneurship and business ownership has always been a big part of my childhood. I spent my young years working excavating in my dad's excavating business, and learned pretty quickly that excavating wasn't necessarily a path in life that I wanted to follow. And I was exposed to finance at a couple stages. One, again, business ownership, seeing my mom and dad run their businesses. When I was I think it was probably my senior year in college, my dad introduced me to a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And The Millionaire Next Door really kind of started getting my thought process going on the importance of saving, the importance of investing, the types of people that are out there who are either what they call income affluent or balance sheet affluent. And it really had me start to think about, what do I want to be as I move into the working world? Which of those characteristics do I want to have? When I transferred from Pitt to the school that I ended up graduating from, I took a finance class. And my thought on being a financial advisor was around managing money and developing portfolios and picking stocks. And we went through a process that really kind of made me fall in love with that. However, as I've gotten into the career, I've been doing this for a little bit over 20 years. That's just a small fraction of what we do.
Yeah.
I think I look at myself more as a coach, somebody developing game plans for folks, and really talking to people about what is important to you. What are your values? And then ultimately, from a financial standpoint, what can we do to help align actions to helping you achieve your goals or what's most important to you?
Yeah, I love that idea of you being a coach because I think it's so true. And as an athlete, we love being coach, right? Like we can remember our first little league youth coach, Pop Warner, or whatever it is. And of course, if we're lucky enough to play in high school or college or even beyond, that person has such an impact on us, right? Think about us as parents. Sometimes we parent like we were coached, right? Because that's the principles maybe that we learn. And I think sometimes we live a financial life as we are coached. And I think now where athletes are is like it's a different planet and it's great, right? You could be at Pitt, Penn State, or SC, UCLA, or anywhere in between. There's some sort of financial literacy happening with athletes because money is a part of their world right now. What have you seen with current, like either elite high school athletes, like the Elite 11, or college athletes in terms of the exposure they're getting? And what exposure do they need if you were going to kind of give them one, two, three bullets for them to really reflect upon or have an answer to when they begin this path that has dollars and cents associated with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the NIL world has completely changed college athletics, and to me, I think it's pretty cool to see the opportunity for people to be compensated and to create brands based on their name, image, and likeness. I know, based upon conversations that we've had, I know that a lot of athletic departments are spending a lot of time on financial literacy, which I think is ultimately important. And the other thing that I think I would tell you too is, as this landscape unfolds, we've done some work and I've talked to a number of people in this space. You also have the sharks coming out. So, I think my industry has gotten a bad rap. I think a lot of that probably is justifiable, and I think there's a lot of athletes who can be or have been taken advantage of, where people just see dollar signs and they're going after the dollar signs, and they're not worried about the coaching or the financial literacy behind these improvements or these changes that student athletes are being faced with. So, and I think the unique perspective that I have is I can wear kind of all those hats. As a former college athlete, I still consider myself an athlete today, although maybe at a different pace. I'm still active and still get after it. But then as a parent too, and having kids who are growing up in athletics. But I think from an athlete perspective, I don't think you have to overcomplicate. I think if you focus on some basic things, not only will it create tremendous wealth for you, but I also think it can create a lot of fulfillment and hopefully less stress and less anxiety in your life. So, if you say three things, I would say number one is focus on what you can control. A lot of people like to look at, the markets or investments or, what can we do to get rich quick? But at the end of the day, we have no control over any of those things. I think when you think about, unfortunately, right? Yeah. So what you think about what we can control the amount of money we save. We can control the amount of money that we spend. And I think there needs to be a balance between the two. When I sit down with people, I don't tell them to save every dollar that they earn. I don't tell them to spend every dollar that they earn. I think it's about going through a process to determine what's important for you. And then having balance and focusing on those controllable aspects of your life. Number two, I would say, so you and I had an opportunity to sit in a class at UCLA, and Yogi did an awesome job talking to the students, and we had the fortune of listening to A-Rod talk, and I think a question was posed around coaches that have had an influence on A-Rod, and he had mentioned Lou Piniella, and Yogi, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you know what I'm gonna say here?
Black belt and fundamentals.
Absolutely. So A-Rod said that Lou Piniella had a concept or a motto called having a black belt in fundamentals. And I remember sitting at the coffee shop with you after that, just thinking about how impactful of a comment that was. And I think having a black belt in fundamentals from a financial perspective makes all of the difference in the world. So, what are some fundamentals people should focus on? I think saving money. I tell everyone they should be saving 10 to 15% of their income. If you can, make it automatic. So Millionaire Next Door, one of the things that they talked about in that book was a concept called paying yourself first. So anytime a dollar hits the account, 10% goes to a savings account, whether that's to buy a house, to invest for the future, to invest in a business, but setting up that automatic system to be able and continue to build wealth over time. The other thing I would say from a black belt and fundamental perspective is don't spend money you don't have. I think I've seen a lot of athletes who have these promises of endorsement deals or promises of contracts. And before the ink is dried on the paper, they're out spending the money or buying something. And I'm not saying, again, don't spend money. I think it's important to have balance, but you want to make sure that you're looking at things in present time. You're, as you say, Yogi, being where your feet are and not always kind of looking out into the future, which, to me, I know is easier said than done, but I think something that's extremely important.
I love that. I want to kind of, double click on that to a degree. How important do you think it is for, again, the framework, if you're the athlete and or the parent, how important is it for them to just pause and try to understand their relationship with money before they do anything with the money or go try to gain more money?
I think that's probably the most important step.
Yeah.
So, the last couple of years in our industry, this concept of behavioral finance or money psychology has been a big focus. And if you think of behavioral finance, it's to me, it's a combination of your emotions, your thoughts, and your feelings. It's a combination of economics. I think it's important to understand how you make decisions. So before you start investing or taking money and spending money, I think it's important to take a step back and understand your relationship with money, to understand what you like to spend money on too, because again, that is an important component of it. But ultimately, it'd be like going into a game without looking at your scouting report, or going into a game without having a game plan. You may win a couple of games, but if you are prepared, if you can take a step back before stepping on the field and really understand the environment, I think there is a significantly higher probability that you'll be more successful.
Yeah, I say that because I think every athlete, if we're being honest with ourselves, or every parent who is helping manage an athlete, and that's what I'm seeing a ton is like these parents are becoming managers, right?
Yeah.
Call it talent managers, whatever. And it makes sense because you're the most trusted person in your child's life, and ideally vice versa. You're not really ready to turn it over to an agency. There will be time for that, in terms of like true representation, not financial planning, but like true representation, like talent agent, talent manager, things like that. I say that because I don't think enough athletes are pausing and saying, what is my relationship with money? Because a lot of times you hear, well, and we do this test at Elite 11, which we talk to them about like their life, their history, where they come from. Sometimes you learn like, yeah, I didn't have a lot growing up, for instance, or we didn't have any money. And I wonder that when sometimes we've all seen the documentary Broke, the 30 for 30 from a decade ago or so, where you get money, you don't really have a plan on what to do with it, and then you have none. Or you're like Rob Gronkowski, who never supposedly spent a penny of the money he earned as an NFL player, would only spend money he got from endorsement deals, like totally had a plan. And I think it's important to get honest with that, around what is my relationship with cash? Like if I got $1 million today, am I buying a new house? Am I buying a new car? Cool. But let me understand like the realities around that. Or do I want to buy like 3 houses in 10 years based on this one check I just got day one? And I don't think that like the pause is happening enough, because I think athletes are thinking, hey, I just got 20 grand in an NIL deal, 100 grand in an NIL deal, $1 million in an NIL deal, and that's life-changing money. And I think in the immediate it is, but I'd be curious your take on what you would tell that athlete who got 5 grand, 20 grand, 500 grand, on what you'd recommend them to do in the pause before they bought the thing that has been top of mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great point. I listened to a podcast on my way home from a conference yesterday, and The Rock was on it. And The Rock said something about living by a motto of an eviction is right around the corner. And I don't know The Rock's financial situation, but I would guess that Eviction is nowhere in the realm of possibility based upon all of the successes that he has. But to me, it's kind of that mindset of, this could come to an end and will come to an end at some point. And to me, and Yogi, I've mentioned this to you, this concept of conservative early, win late, really, again, pausing, understanding your relationship with money, what is important to you. I think the more successful people get, there's this thing in finance called lifestyle creep. So lifestyle creep is basically, as you make more money, you spend more money, which I think is to be expected. But again, you need to have the balance between the two, and success can be a detriment to people, man. Like it can be a drug that, you think you're invincible. And if you're spending everything that you make, at some point, the playing career will come to an end. And if you haven't done the steps early on and have been conservative early on, there could be points in time in the future that you need to take a harsh look at reality and may not have been the best steward of your money over time. So it's hard to slow down. I think investing, I think finance, it's an endurance sport. It's not a sprint. It's more of a marathon. And I've done a couple of Ironman triathlons in the past, and the races that I came out and I was like hammering at the beginning of the run. I hit a wall at like mile 10 and was just trying to survive at the end. The races where I paced myself, I had a game plan, I knew the certain minutes per mile that I was trying to achieve on the run. The results were a lot better because I had the game plan and I slowed down and really understood what needed to happen.
Okay, so I want to go hard on that. So
Yeah.
you and I are in our early 40s, to give it away to everybody who doesn't think we're in our late 20s. With that said, the numbers on the athletes making it to the NFL have not changed, will not change, right? It's less than 1% are going to make it to the next level. An even smaller percentage will make it to a second contract, right? So I say that of now we're in a world where high school and college athletes can make a little bit of money, right? Let's just take a high school athlete in California who can make money in NIL. Let's just say he does a really cool partnership with the local sandwich shop and he makes $5,000 for the entirety of his junior and senior year. And or let's take the college athlete who's making $25,000 a year. Those are like more common than the $500,000 deals.
Right.
They're also very similar to the percentage of players not making the NFL. Like everybody's getting some sort of deal. So what would you say as a financial advisor to somebody who's like, well, I only made like $1,000, I only made $5,000, or only made $20,000 over a couple of years? Like, is that even enough to get going? Like, what could that small little, that small number that feels like a lot to all of us at that age, but in the big picture isn't a lot? What would you recommend them to do with that when they get it? And then how could it benefit them when they're our age if they do something with it then?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story. Had a client whose son was graduating college, and the client has done just an awesome job saving money, owned a business, and really super successful from a financial perspective. And he was trying to teach his son who was graduating a lesson. And the lesson was on the importance of saving and the importance of saving early. And he asked me, he said, Dane, can you show my son, can you run a spreadsheet or some type of statement to show how much money he needs to start saving today at 22 years old to have $1 million by the time he's 65? So what I did is I went through and I built out this spreadsheet that looked at savings and how much you need to save at age 22, at age 30, at age 40, and at age 50 to have $1 million by the time you're 65 years old. And I assumed an 8% rate of return, which looking at markets, I think is realistic over time. But the numbers were like eye-opening to me, man. It was like at 22, you needed to save $2,800 a year. So from 22 to 65, $2,800 every single year, no more, get an 8% rate of return. You got $1 million by the time you're 65.
Wow.
Like $2,800, that's less than a car payment. It's probably a cable bill if people still have cable, cell phone bill. If you wait to 30, it went to like 5,400. If you wait till 40, it went to like 12, 13,000. And if you waited to 50, it was like $33,000 you needed to save every single year to have $1 million by the time you're 65. So, when you break it into small increments, you look at what I would say are manageable steps to take, having a black belt in fundamentals and having consistent savings in place. It doesn't take a whole lot to get started. But I think the most important thing is to start. So many times, people come into my office and they'll say, if I would have worked with you 10 years ago, or if I would have started 20 years ago, I would have so much more money. And I recognize that life is busy and things happen. And sometimes saving money and investing isn't a top priority. But for college athletes, for high school athletes, for young people, man, the sooner you can start, the less you have to put away. And as that grows, compound interest is a big thing. And it doesn't take a whole lot to have a whole lot in the future.
Yeah, I was definitely one of those people. We started working together when I was in my 30s.
Yep.
And that number had grown.
Yep.
How do you feel about the term scarcity mindset? Because I think what you said about The Rock is a great quote, and it's cool. But I think there's like a difference between like, here we are as a high performer, high achiever, current athlete, former athlete. Like, you've kicked butt your whole life. Like, you've attacked. And when it comes to finance, like, sometimes you want to attack too, because that's what you know.
Yep.
And attacking may look like spending it all. It may look like saving it all. I don't know. But I do think there's this thing where it's like, when I heard that quote, I'm like, hey, that's living kind of in scarcity. Like, hey, you got to save everything versus I want to grow something. Like, The Rock's also a billion. I imagine he's a billionaire. Like, he's grown an entire empire.
Yeah.
So you have to take risks. So how do you help people who maybe have a little bit of cash now? And we're seeing, we're talking about the finance athlete. There's also like the artist athlete, the creative athlete, the curator of content athlete. Like, what would you recommend to somebody who's like, hey, I've got this idea, whether it's my YouTube show or whether it's the pizza parlor, whether it's my private business or my real estate firm, like whatever they want to do now that they're getting money a little earlier in their athletic career than ever before?
Yeah. So I think number one is going through a values exercise and determining what's important to you. I always tell people before they ever invest a dollar, you need to understand, again, as we talked about earlier, your relationship with money. As I see people that we work with here, most folks who've created the most wealth have invested in themselves. They've invested in businesses. And I think having ownership in something, from my experience, creates a lot of wealth. But what I would say is, just from my experience and my approach to building a business and being part of a high performing team and building some success on my end, it's never going like all in on one specific thing. I'm a big fan of diversification, options, taking risks, but also having a safety net that if the risk that you're taking doesn't come to fruition, you have other things to fall back on.
Yeah. I think that's like a big note, because that's to me where like the coach comes in, and it's like, hey, I want to invest in this, or I like this concept. And what I always tell athletes, like, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I see them like developing their own logos all the time. And I'm like, dude, leverage the logo that you're playing with. Like, leverage the Michigan logo, leverage the Oregon logo. Like, don't worry about like the logo on your social media handle. And I wonder, like, what do you feel about that dance, having played in college and seeing what's going on in college currently, or what you'd advise an athlete around even investing in themselves? Like, there's an immediate self and there's like a planned self. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong, but I'd be curious what you think.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think if you can leverage both brands, I think to me that would kind of be an ideal situation. I think college athletes are put on a pedestal. I think college athletes have exposure to people that normal students may not have exposure to. So, I would say leverage the platform that you have, leverage the connections that you have. If I think about some of my best friends and some of my folks that I do business with, almost all of us are former college athletes. We played football together in college, and we had access to business owners and thought leaders and entrepreneurs who wanted to give back to the programs that were so important to them. And it's something that I want to look to do as well, is to give back to programs that have meant so much to me and have impacted my life as well. Building a personal brand, I think, in the world of influencers and access to content and information, I wouldn't have people shy away from building a personal brand. But again, I wouldn't go all in necessarily on that personal brand. As you mentioned, I would leverage the prominent brand that you have and the instant and immediate access that you have by being part of that brand.
Yeah, that's a good response. Like, just to add to that, we wrote about this in the book 5-Star QB of, let's just say, to just be general, like the local pizza shop offers you, or if you're listening, your child, a sweet NIL deal because they're a star within the local community on campus. And you could take that $500, and in the exchange of services would be you have to post 2 Instagram photos a month. Cool, no problem. Those deals like that happen left and right all the time, sometimes for even more money.
Right.
The advice that we gave in the book that I'd imagine you would co-sign on is, cool, take the deal, but only A, if you like pizza, but B, to understand your psychology around this business agreement. If you're like, hey, someday I want to own my own pizza shop, my own restaurant, okay, then negotiate within this contract, within this agreement. Once a month, I'm going to have lunch with the owner. Once a month, I'm going to meet the investors. Once a month, I am going to meet with consumers. And by the end of this partnership deal, let's just say it's a 2 or 3 month or 4 month deal, whoever is on that team is going to help me develop my business plan around my pizza shop, my restaurant. So I walk out of there with an understanding of this business, and do I want to go down this lane or do I not? And if I do, maybe I have an investor now. Maybe I have a team of people that I've gotten to know versus making it very transactional of $500, 2 Instagram pics, and call it a day. And I think that will allow the athlete to do the psychology of money, as you referenced, to be like, hey, this is kind of what I'm into. I saw this money grow to that and another franchise or whatever whatever the endeavor is. But I just feel like that is where I would put the intentionality around time, because it's still a lot of time to be an elite athlete. Like, you can't just, right? Like, you can't just give me a bunch of NIL deals and I'll spend all my time there, and then I'm just going to be good because I'm good. Like, you got to work your craft, like
Right.
the main thing.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. And, you go back to that platform. I think some of these NIL deals or the exposure that athletes get, it doesn't always have to be monetary. And I would bet and guess that some of the non-monetary benefits of these relationships probably will reap larger rewards in the future than if you get a check for $5,000 from the pizza shop to do Instagram posts. The relationships and the mentorship and the community and the connection that you can build, I would guess, would probably make larger rewards in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Before we cut you loose here, let's talk about mom and dad for a minute. I think sometimes in the athletic world, especially when you get good or you get notoriety, it can feel as though there's vultures, right? You said that in the beginning of this conversation, like there's also some bad people in this industry.
Yep.
How would you coach or guide mom and dad who are likely helping manage their child around being a finance athlete? And what are some of the things that, like, they should feel confident in doing versus like, no, we just want to take this money and put it under the couch per se? Like, what would you guide them to do if you were the coach?
Yeah, so parents, they serve an important role in this. And I think, unfortunately, there's no rule book or guidebook to being a parent. And I can empathize with a lot of parents who are going through this right now with their kids, and helping them make good decisions with their money. I think it comes back to, as a parent, not forcing your opinions on your kids. I think having an understanding of your relationship with money is extremely important. I think being vulnerable with your kids, sharing experiences that you've had with money, both good experiences and bad experiences. One of the steps that we go through with our clients is a behavioral finance or money psychology questionnaire to really understand people's relationship with money. And I think as a parent, I try to educate my kids around saving and the benefit of investing in yourself and paying yourself first, some of the concepts that we talked about, but really having a full understanding of the parent relationship with money. As a parent, I would surround yourself with a team. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make from a financial perspective is using emotion to drive decisions. And I think that's one of the advantages of having a team, whether it's an advisor, an accountant, an agent, whatever the case is. I think a lot of times a professional or a team of people who are looking out for your best interest can help you minimize mistakes by eliminating the emotional decisions that we can sometimes make. And emotional decisions can be, when emotions are good and running high, you can sometimes take on more risk. When you're not as optimistic and emotions are running the other direction, you can be overly conservative. And like you said, put all of your money under a mattress. So I think having somebody to provide direction and minimize emotion is extremely important. The last thing I would say is, invest in what you understand. There's so much information that's out there. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. We've seen athletes get caught up in some speculative investments over the years where, they were either spokespeople for investments that didn't come to fruition, or they were giving money to companies that weren't returning, were promising things, but not returning anything to the athlete. So, I always tell people, and I always kind of live by, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So make sure you understand what you're investing in and it makes sense to you before ever moving forward in any of those directions.
What is there an age that's too young
to invest?
Yeah, like I say this of like, if I'm a parent watching this right now and I'm saying, okay, like my child is making a little bit of money in sport, and because they're making it in a bunch of different ways, whether there's NIL funds, whether it's the Alston case, like there's ways in which college athletes are now finding a way to get a couple extra bucks in addition to their scholarship check into their pocket. What would, like, if they called you up, right, and they called up Roseville, like what would you do? And like, what is it when is too, like, is it ever too early? And do you ever need a certain amount of money to get going?
No, I would say number one, it's never too early. It's always a good time. And as I talked about before, the sooner that money gets put away, the easier that is to grow over time. I think one of the nice things about investing today is, we have people come to us, their kids have, $500 that they're looking to get started with and put it away. So there's really every type of investment. There could be, certain minimums or where it makes sense, but I think there's a lot of really good alternatives out there, whether you buy an index fund or something that's low cost, to at least get money set aside and start the process of investing money, start the thought process of actively putting money into some type of investment, and then share it with your kids as you get the statements or as you log on. Show your kids how the money has grown. Show your kids, if we go through a year like 2022 where the money hasn't grown, but really educate them on that importance. And I think more importantly than what type of investment is out there, it's the behavioral concept, the discipline of consistently executing, consistently putting money away. That to me is what is most important.
What is the best advice that you would give an athlete, a retired athlete, or the parents of an athlete right now?
Best advice I would give. That's a good question. I would say, sort of what I started with, focus on the controllables. There's so much noise out there. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses, as they say. If your friend buys something or invests in something, it doesn't mean that you have to. So really try to focus on the controllable aspects, try to focus on what's important to you, and then create behaviors and systems. And again, I think that ultimately can lead to a significant amount of wealth, other than, as I mentioned before, trying to choose the right investment or choose the right stock.
What is the worst piece of advice that athletes often get?
The worst piece of advice is, I would say, worrying about what other people think. I heard you and Dr. Mike talking about fear of other people's opinions. I talked about keeping up with the Joneses earlier. I think in a world of social media, as kind of the highlight reel, I think there's a lot of comparison that goes on, and I think that's part of why we're seeing this increase in anxiety and depression, um, dissatisfaction, because we're consistently comparing ourselves to what others are doing. And it's hard, man. Like if my friends buy something cool, like I kind of want to do that too. I want to be part of the club. But again, at the end of the day, I think what matters most is that you love yourself, you focus on what's important to you, and try and eliminate all of the noise and all of the distraction, because that can be that can be anxiety inducing. Plus, I think when you look at creating wealth and building wealth in these financial athlete principles that we're talking about, if you're doing things that aren't in alignment with what you feel is most appropriate, it's going to be hard to come out on the other end at the level of success that you want.
Yeah. And then in all your experiences as an athlete, a parent, a son, a partner, and someone who obviously is advising people, in the millions and millions and millions of dollars every single year, when it comes to finance and the planning of it, what is it that you know for sure to be completely true?
So I think I think having systems is important. I think whether it's $1 or $10 or $100, just get started. To me, that's the most important, because you don't want to be in that situation where 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, you're saying, I wish I would have back then. So, I think people get intimidated sometimes because they think that, well, if I want to invest money, I need to have a certain amount of dollars where it really makes sense to invest. So, what I know to be true is just start. And I think over time, you can slowly start to increase that amount of money that you save. What I also know to be true is people who go through a planning process, their likelihood of success to achieve their goals, knowing, are they on track? What do I need to do as things happen in my life, as things change? How do I pivot? I know people who go through a consistent planning process, whether you do that with an advisor or on your own, the levels of success that those people reach will be higher than those who are just kind of winging.
That's good, Dane. You're on it, man. I've always been really impressed with you on a bunch of levels, but to hear this today, it's so evident that you can just get started, and
Yep.
it's not as heavy as it seems. Like a mentor, both of ours would say, it's okay to do things that are hard, but you don't always have to do things that are heavy. And I think sometimes finance feels both. How do I do this? This seems really hard. Oh my God, it is really heavy. Let me just put it in a savings account, period,
Yep.
full stop.
Yep.
Or let me just spend it because I never had it, versus just a couple calls or a call with a person like yourself at 18, 22, 25 can set you up when you're 42, 55, let alone 65. And I appreciate the convo, man. If people wanted to get a hold of you that watch this, what is the best way for them to learn some of your principles, gain some of your takeaways, possibly collaborate with you on their plan?
Yeah, best thing you can do is go to our website, rosevillewealth.com. Gives you an overview of our team. I think, I talk a lot about teams. We have, in my opinion, the best team in the business. I know, I get sort of recognized as the face of Roseville, and but the team of people that we have behind us. I have 3 business partners who are total rock stars, who probably deserve as much, if not more, credit than I get. And you can look into what our beliefs are. You can look into how we approach client relationships. If you're just looking for information, there's articles, there's links that you can click on if you're just looking to do a little bit of research. But again, I'll reiterate, don't get bogged down in the details initially. There's so much information out there. The most important thing is to get started. That is step number 1 for parents or athletes. Just get started. And again, look for trusted professionals, people who have your best interest in mind. And I think the sky's the limit.
It's an amazing way to end, Dane, because when you begin youth sports, whether it was you swimming, football, basketball, your daughters, or anybody listening and their kids are throwing the football around, like, you just have to get started and you begin to learn the fundamentals. And as you learned in our conversation that you shared, like, you begin the road to mastery around those fundamentals. And I think it's the same thing in finance. And as someone who loves mentoring the next generation of leaders within this space, God, I just hope you hear us and hear Dane of just get in the game and begin with the fundamentals. And that fundamental might be $500 and investing it in something you have an interest in. It could be Beats, it could be Nike, it could be whatever. And I think that will continue to prove to you that it'll pay dividends, major ones possibly, down the road. So thank you for coming down this road with me, Dane. For all of you out there, make sure you subscribe right here to this YouTube channel. Trying to just give you content that can help your life. So if you're the parent, an athlete of a parent, a current athlete, a retired athlete, somebody who loves sport and also wants to make a little bit of cash, this conversation was for you. Share with a friend. Let us know what you think. And always come on back for more. Peace.